how to access a list. So let me say, okay, I have a list called list A, and then I'm going to store a couple of numbers. Right. Now let's say I want to access the very first element. How can I access it? That was the question.
A
A.
0.
Yes, A is 0, right? So if you say A 0, yeah, remember that you have to use square brackets, right? We have to use square brackets to access it, right? And at the same time, let me say I want to access the last element. What should I type?
A4.
Yes, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? A4. It will give you me the last element. Another way of accessing the last element. Any other ways of accessing the last element? Now this is forward indexing. How about backward indexing? Yes.
A negative.
Negative what? Yes, you are correct. Negative what? Okay, so let me start with that one. So there's a forward indexing as well as backward indexing. I thought we have discussed this under strings, right? Remember, we discussed dialogue and then we accessing each individual item backwards. You remember that one?
Yes.
So then how do you access the last one?
A negative 1.
Exactly. Yeah, you can simply say A minus 1. It's easier to remember, isn't it? Start with minus 1. Otherwise, you have to, count, right? To get to the last element, isn't it? You have to count like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Since we have only 5 values, it's okay. But if you have a very lengthy one, if I ask you to access the last one, then you'll have trouble, right? So remember that. It's very, very important. Another thing, right? Let's say I want to select first item, second item, and third item. How can I access that? I want to access item 1, item 2, item 3. How do you access the first 3 elements?
S. S 0 to 2.
It's not S, this time it's A, 0 to
2.
Not 2. It should be 3, right? Because what we need is 0, 1, 2. I need the first 3 elements, I said. Right? Okay. Another shorter way to do this?
A bracket
Mm.
2 3
Colon 3.
colon 3.
Yeah. I hope you remember, right? This is called slicing. We have done this with the strings. So the very same thing you can do with the list as well. So in list manipulation, right? Remember that you can, slice and dice, and you can do the same thing, right? So in our case, we said it's A, right? And then when you access the first item, it's 0. Last item -1, isn't it? Yes. Okay. I want to access the max value in A. What should I type? I want to access the maximum number inside A.
A equal max number is
We need max what? A, isn't it? Number list is the previous example. So how can I access the minimum value there?
min A.
Yes, we can say min A, minimum value of A. Right. Then how can I sort the values?
A dot sort.
Exactly. So if you say A dot sort, yes, hopefully if you get back A, so it's sorted. Right. So let's take down this first, right? So I hope as an example, we will take down this. Um, so list manipulation, we will say example. I will share. Consider the following list A, right? And then I'm asking a couple of questions. Python statement to access the first item in list A. Write a Python statement to access the last item in list A. So that's what we were discussing. Then we can say write a Python statement to access first 3 elements. First, let's say 3 items in the list A. Write the Python statement to get the maximum value, to get the maximum value in the list A, right? And minimum value in list A What is the Python statement to sort the list A in ascending order? Right. Ascending. Right. Now let me share the slide with you. Right. So I hope you can get the answers, right? Let me share first. Take down this, and this is exactly what we were discussing. පුතේ ලියාගෙන ඉවරන මට කියන්න. So tuples, it's an ordered collection of items. It's very similar to lists, right? But there's one difference that you could see. Now, previous one in list, we have used square brackets. But when it comes to tuples, we are using rounded brackets, right? But another difference is once you create the tuple, no, you cannot add, remove, or change elements, right? So therefore, we call it immutable data type. Immutable data type. So remember here, we actually create a number tuple with 5 numbers, but one difference is the brackets. So when you print it, you will get the same result. You can access each individual element using index, that's possible. But remember, you cannot add, you cannot change, right? Or you cannot remove or delete any items in the tuple. So in dictionary, you have 2 values. So in number dictionary, we have 1, 2, 3 in both English and Japanese. So the first value known as key and the second value known as value. So usually in a dictionary, what we have is key and value pairs. Now, for example, let's say I want to access the first element. we can say number dict 0 if you go by the convention earlier. But this time you can say 1, 2, and 3. So you have already given some name. Right. When you have to access each individual element, now you can use that term, the key value there. It's easier. Right. Now let's look at how adding new data. Right. Let's say I'm going to add new data. So adding new data. So what I could do is I can say number dict. Let's say I'm going to add 4. And the value for 4 is, let's say, yon. Now if you print, now you will see that we have 4 values. Let's take down these things. First one is about creating a list. Second one and third one, we are accessing the elements in the dictionary. And the next one is we add a new data item to the list, dictionary. Right, let's remove data. Now to remove data, we can use del number dictionary. So this is exactly how we have done. Here we have to provide a value. So let's say 2. Right. Now again, let's print the output. Now we have left with 1, 3, and 4. Okay, let's take down this. But this one, we are going to look at how to handle files, right? So usually when you run a program, the content will be stored in the RAM. And we know that random is a temporary memory. And when power goes off, when program ends, whatever the content inside the RAM disappears. So if you want to save data permanently, then you have to save that as a file in the secondary storage. Right. So for that, we will create the files. Right. Putih lihat ගන්නකො මේ ටික.
Sir,
Right. In this one, we will discuss how to open a text file. So for that, we have to use the function called open function. And open function will create a file in Python. But it takes 2 values, name and the mode. Name means the name of the file. You can provide any name you want. And then you have to specify what we call a mode. Now, there are few values you can take. For example, Simple R, we can say, okay, open file only for reading. Then when you say R plus, that means open the file for both read and write. Then W, open file only to write. Likewise, we have W plus, then we can open the file for read as well as write. Right. And then A, I will type. If you have already have the data, you are going to append the data at the end. We call A. A plus, we can use to read and data, and then you can append the data together, right? So let's write down this one. So the mode is open file for write and read. Then we can have A. So open existing file to add new content. At the end, we call append. And then A plus, append, right? So these are the options we have. Let's take down this one. How to write the function. Now, to write a file, we need to learn more methods. One thing we have already discussed is file open. So open file and mode, we already discussed this one. So when you open a file, remember you need to close the file. Anytime when you open a file, after finishing, you need to close the file. So there will be a close function or close method in Python to close the file. Then for reading, we are going to look at several things. First one, when you say read lines, it reads all the lines. Read line, it reads one line at a time. Read, it reads whole file. And finally, we have write method. That write method will write whatever the content inside the file. So these are the all functions that you need to know, right? So let's take down this one aspect. We create a file for writing. So we use open method, and this is the first argument, the name of the file and the mode. Now W we discussed earlier for writing. Then the write method, this write method, whatever you put inside will go inside the file. So here we have two lines, right? And this last one we call new line character. If you miss this, what will happen? Everything will be in a single line. So this is to say that, okay, please go to the next line, right? And finally, we close the file. Now let me save this, right? I'm going to save this. Inside C, we have created some folder. Right? And I'm going to say, okay, write file. So that's the name given for this file. So now let me go to that folder. Right? If you go here, you will see, right? we have this set of files, but there's no file called test.txt, isn't it? Nimesha, can you see any file with test.txt? No,
No,
right?
sir.
We have only Python files. So let me run this, run module. Now when I run it, and if I go back, now you see there's a file called test.txt. If you double click it, right? If you double click it, now you see that inside the file, we have 2 lines printed, Anna School of Computing, Putlam Road. Okay. Understood? So what we need to do is we create the file for writing, and then each line you have to use write method, and finally you can close the file. Okay, so let's take down this